And one other experiment we can do to show that a force inward is required to keep the ball moving in a circular path. The ball will be moving in this path. When the ball is right here, I'll lift up the ring, and you'll notice that the ball will continue on with a straight line motion in the absence of a net force. Demonstrating that a centripetal force or an inward force is required to keep an object moving in a circular path. Demonstrating that a centripetal force or an inward force is required to keep an object moving in a circular path.
Okay, so simply put, as the man just said, a centripetal force or an inward force is required to keep an object moving in a circular path. Now, in the absence of that, the object will fly off at a straight line as per Newton's law. An object in motion will tend to stay in motion unless it's acted upon by that net force. Well, there is no net force here at the pole. There is no gravity located at the pole, which it would have to be in order for the water to circle around. And now that gravity is located at the center of the ball, of the sphere, and being that water wants to move in a straight line, which is also called a great circle, watch my last video on why water moves to the equator of a ball, or a sphere, I forget what I said, but anyway. A great circle, which is a straight path on a ball, shares the same center as the sphere that it's on. So gravity would aid in water. If the gravity ball was real, it would aid in the water going straight, because it would act like this tether, like the man's hand and the rope to the ball, right? And it wants to go in a straight line. Everything orbits. Now, of course, orbits are only real in video games, but they present orbits as something orbiting around or circling around a center of mass. The center of mass would be on the ball. Earth would be the center of the Earth, the core, right? The dead center of the Earth is the maximum gravity. So everything would want to tether around that. So water would move straight, as we observe here on our flat, motionless Earth, with density and buoyancy and no gravity. But things move straight. That's just elementary. You don't need to have a Newton with his law. It's elementary. Everything goes straight unless it's acted upon by something else. Well, there's nothing to act upon it at the pole. There's no tether to do this, like he's swinging the ball around his head. That's because it's tethered to his hand. The rope is tied to the ball and it's tethered to his hand. So this is busted. This is not possible. To see scenes like this with still water, absolutely glass-like water, and remember this too, you get up in the morning sometimes and if it's really calm. One time I went out and saw a lake just before a storm came. It was actually a hurricane. The water was like glass. But remember, just because a storm's coming, there's no wind blowing, doesn't mean the Earth's not rotating. It's still rotating, piling up a 14-mile high equatorial bulge, they say, and the poles are flattening due to the rim speed of 1,000 miles per hour at the equator of this spinning fake ball, this fake spinning ball. So in order to see these glass-like water, the water would have to move around and stay at the latitude lines. Now, I'm going to go into this with these shills who all describe the Earth as a cylinder. That's the only way they can describe it to make it work, because a sphere, it doesn't work. And I'll show you that in another video. I'm working on it. So in order for this water to be glass like this and not moving, right, it has to be moving and staying on the latitude lines. But as I showed in the last video that I put out, why water moves to the equator of a spinning ball, and I'm showing you here with this diagram, water won't move around the latitude lines unless it's tethered to the pole, because the latitude lines are a curve. I go into this in the other video too. All great circles, now see all the longitude lines? This is on the right here. I have the longitude lines. Those are all great circles. They all intersect each other. They all bisect the ball, meaning they cut the ball in half. They're always drawn. It's the biggest circle you can draw on a sphere. And to traverse that circle, you travel in a straight line. You don't veer left or right at all. You go dead straight, and you just go, you arc over the ball. That's all, up and over. But you go in a straight line. All other circles, which are called small circles, are curves. They're turns. You have to turn to traverse them. Okay, before I go any further, let me just prove to you with a physical demonstration here that the latitude lines, here they look like straight lines, but that the latitude lines are actually turns. The only one that's not a turn, like I said, is the equator. Okay, so now change the perspective a little bit. You saw from the side view, they look like straight lines. But now I'm going to take a taut string, overlay it, which is clearly a straight line in the beginning of a great circle. If I continued that string all the way around, it would make one big circle, and it always shares the center with the center of the sphere. Okay, just wanted to prove that. They're also called, the latitude lines are called parallels. Now the only latitude line that's a great circle is the equator. The equator, you would essentially traverse it like traversing a Ferris wheel. You go straight up and over. The other latitude lines start to become like a merry-go-round. You start to have to turn, and the higher up you go, the smaller the circle is, the more it turns. So let me just explain this little diagram real quick that I made up. The red dot, gravity, or the source of the inward force, right? So this left circle, we have the top view, and then I have two side views. Now the left one is the top view. You can see that water moves tangentially, or this arrow right here is a tangent to the radius of a circle or a sphere. Okay, so it's at a right angle. That's where the water is going to want to go in absence of any centripetal or inward force, or in the absence of a tether, like in that tether ball. If he cuts the line, the ball shoots off in a straight line. If he cuts the rope, it shoots off in a straight line. So in order to traverse these latitude lines, which you can clearly see are turns because I overlaid a straight line, and you can see they're turns. But when you look at a latitude, look at the middle ball, and you see those latitude lines, they look straight. And so these ball earthers have been, the shills that came to my channel in hordes, have been claiming that water would move at a right angle because it would be tangent like this, like in the first one right here. Yes, a tangent to a turn is a straight line, but that's not a tangent for a latitude line. A latitude line is a circle, like I showed with the hula hoop, right? Yeah, if you put a hula hoop at eye level and look at it perfectly at eye level and it's level with the ground, it appears to be a straight line. Now it also depends on how you traverse that hula hoop. They want you to believe, and the only way they can make this work is if the earth were a cylinder. So they would have you traverse it on the outside. That would be perpendicular to the center. So you would walk around the outside of the hula hoop. But that's not what small circles, all the other latitude lines, you don't walk that way. The only line you walk like that, or the only latitude line that you walk like that, is the equator. All the other ones you start to shift up on top of the hula hoop. You start to walk on the side of the hula hoop. So that's the tricky part. So this is a perspective issue. As you look at the latitude lines, they appear in this middle diagram, they appear to be flat, straight lines. But in reality, like a hula hoop, it's not a straight line. It just depends how you look at it. When you look at it from above, you can see the latitude lines are hard left circles, on the spinning globe, where the Earth is rotating to the east. And remember, the water is moving at hundreds of miles per hour. Up here in this tightest circle, that might be 200 miles per hour, 300 miles per hour. The next one might be 500 miles per hour, 700 miles per hour, 900 miles per hour. That's water that's going to move straight. So when water does move straight, and let's look at this center diagram. You have all these lines are pointing at the center, right? Because that's where the centripetal force in their model, their inward force, is at the center of the ball. And notice also that these are great circles. Each one of these would bisect the circle, would cut the circle in half. And so that's the only way, if water or anything is to move on a straight line in a ball, it goes on a great circle course. And a great circle course is a straight line. So this actually, they're going to use gravity. It's gravity that causes water to circle around the poles. Well, no, gravity's not located at the poles. Gravity's located at the center of the ball. So actually, their gravity aids in my argument that the water would move to the equator, just like we see on the spinning red ball or spinning tennis ball. The water moves to the equator. Now they're going to claim it's different with the Earth, but I'm here to show you that gravity works exactly the same way. It makes everything move in a great circle or in a straight line, because everything's going to want to essentially orbit around. Again, like I said, if orbits were real, they're real in video games, but it's going to want to orbit around that center of mass. So you can see I show the surface of the sphere. Now, of course, if it's a cylinder, yeah, and you have gravity located at the pole, and this is what they argue, but they don't know they're arguing this, or they know it and they're lying. I always say these ballers are either super stupid or liars, but they're probably both. In order to traverse in a straight line, like they're trying to tell you that water moves on these latitude lines, stays put in its latitude lane, that's why we see glass like water when the wind's not blowing. The only way that can actually happen is if the Earth were a cylinder and gravity is distributed evenly throughout the pole, and then gravity would go up and over like Ferris wheels at all these latitude lines, these black lines, whatever, think of them as latitude lines. But on a sphere, it's not. The surface here on a sphere, to go in a straight line, takes you down to the equator. All latitude lines intersect each other, and they all definitely then also intersect the equator. So these little right angles that I'm showing, that's water coming up over the ball. Let's say the ball's turning to the right here, or eastward. That would be water coming up. And as soon as, it's hard to visualize too, because it's a moving ball already. It's not like let's just start the ball moving. It's moving. So at any given point on this sphere, water's going to move in a straight line, just like this spinning red ball. The water, or this tennis ball, water flies out in a straight line. It looks kind of like it's curving, but it's not. That's just water leaving the ball at every split second at the next point on the ball where the water is. The water spins off, spins off, spins off, spins off. And when it spins off like that, you get this kind of spiral look. But it's not spiraling. That's just the accumulation of all the drops, because they've left the ball that's turning, they've left at different points and at different times, and it creates that illusion of a spiral. But all the water drops are actually going in a straight line. So that's what would happen on Earth. Hundreds of mile per hour moving Earth, hundreds of mile per hour moving water would have to go in a straight line. So the Earth would have never formed. It would have been water all moved to the equator and crashing, maybe flying off, I don't know, but at least it would all be crashing at the equator, because there's nothing to stop the water from moving. Remember, it's tethered to the center, like I show with this ball. Imagine this is an ice ball, or this is an ice puck, and it's moving around. I actually have this puck tethered to the center of this ball. So I am rotating the center. I actually have a ball inside this ball, and I have it tethered or sitting on that other ball, but the other ball's hidden. You can't see it. So when I rotate the ball around, you see this puck moving around. That's exactly what it would do. It's free to move in all directions. Gravity doesn't stop that movement. But when you add water, when you add rotation, and now you have water moving at hundreds of miles per hour and water wanting to move straight, it's going to move in a great circle, and that's these little hash lines here with the square and then the hash lines. It's going to move to the equator. Period. This is so busted. oh my God, you got to share this video, or the one before this even. But this is busted. And like I said, I will follow up with another video on how these shills describe the rotation in terms of a cylinder, because it's the only way it works. But I busted them. I'll show you that one. It's coming up. But right here you can see water has to move. And this is observable. We see this. You spin a ball and the water flies. I even had one stupid shill, I'll give this away, but he said, prove that water moved from other places on the ball to the equator, from the poles. Prove that water moves, because all you're showing is water flying off the ball. So he's basically saying, and this is a complete lie, he's in complete denial, he's trying to fib, he's trying to cover up, and he's busted. He's saying that all this water moving off the ball is only moving off from the equator. It's not moving from toward the poles or all the other parts of the ball. It's just moving off on this equator line. That's where the water's moving off. How stupid can you be? This is like, I'm going to date myself here, but Mary Poppins, when she pulled out her purse and she started pulling lamps out and a chair and all this stuff out of it, obviously, the magic of television or movies. But that's basically what he's saying. Also, the equator line is somehow creating all this water to come flying off. No, dum-dum. All the water is moving to the equator. And that's why by the end of the spin here, you see it hardly has any water coming off, because it all spun off.
Can you not see that?
All right, so it's busted. Share this video, link to it, and yeah. Remember, their whole world is built on this lie. This was one of the first lies. The first lie was, of course, Satan saying, you won't die if you eat from that tree. Of course, this is a biblical story. You can believe it or not. That's up to you. But the ball earth was a story created to counter what the Bible says. Bible's creation story. And believe me, 99% of those who identify as Christians believe this science story over the biblical story, or a biblical account. They believe this science story. That's not good. That's not good. If you're professing to be a Christian, that is not good. You need to believe God. Noah believed God, and he was rescued. God went to him. He would be the only one that could build an ark. I'm getting off on a whole other thing, but he'd be the only one that would build an ark at the time, because he's the only one that believed God. All the rest of them would have gone to the science gurus of the day and said, God wants us to build a boat. And they would be like, there's no water. You're in the desert, dummies. And none of them would have built the boat. But Noah was obedient. He knew God's omniscient. And God said, build a boat. And Noah said, how big? You ever heard the thing, jump, and you say, how high? As opposed to, well, why? Questioning it. He didn't question, because it's God talking to him. And so he built the boat, and the rest is history. But this is their great lie. There was a big bang, and here's this spinning ball Earth. And they are protecting it. They have a whole, listen, all the colleges and universities, all the science books, all the professors, all the NASA, people going to school, paying a lot of money for these degrees to learn all this science about astronomy and cosmology and cosmogony, if that's even a word. Who cares? It's all stupid. It's all fake. It's all made up. But this is the Marxist money economy. They created all this fake science stuff because the fake science people support these people who are in our country, would be in Washington, stealing. You gotta remember, once you start taking in all these taxes, and I know I'm going all over the place, but it's good stuff. Once you have a big pool of money, the grifters show up. Once they started the tax and they had this huge pool of money, people start to rationalize, hey, if I don't take it, somebody else will, right? So they start stealing. And it's like, I lived in a condo situation. Same thing happens. They bring in money, and next thing you know, the condo people are getting kickbacks and spending the money, because you don't get the kickback till you spend the money. And I'm sorry I digressed on this. I could go on and on. That's a whole other subject, man. If anybody wanted me to talk about that more, which I probably will anyway, because I'm doing what I want to do. So that's it. It's busted. We'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye.